So who here likes camping? Sitting around a fire listening to crickets, the wind through the trees, and footsteps that don't belong to anyone you brought with you. Just kidding. Probably. Welcome back to Beyond the Veil, where true scary stories aren't just told, they're remembered. But some memories don't fade, especially the ones made in the woods. Maybe it's the silence. Maybe it's what's hiding behind it. Tonight, we bring you a collection of terrifying, real camping stories. Some are warnings, some are mysteries. All of them stayed with the people who lived them. Let's begin. Story 1, The Fire That Called Back. I used to love the quiet that came with camping in the backcountry of Idaho, the kind of silence that wraps around you like a thick blanket. No cars, no voices, no notifications, just wind through the pines and the steady crackle of a fire. I went out there alone last spring after a long, brutal stretch of work, burnout, and too many screens. I needed to feel small again, needed to hear my own thoughts breathe, so I picked a clearing not marked on any map halfway between two peaks with a stream just close enough to lull me to sleep. I pitched my tent just before sunset, gathered some branches, and got a small fire going. I cooked a can of chili, the cheap kind that tastes like heaven when you're under stars, and sat with my back against a log, sipping slowly and watching the embers dance. I remember letting out this deep sigh like my body finally believed it was safe again. That night, I put the fire out, carefully scattered the coals, stomped the last glow, dead, and even poured water over the ashes before crawling into my tent. The cold set in quickly, but I slept hard that first night. In the morning, I woke to birdsong and sun and something strange. The fire pit I dug shallow and clean was now filled with blackened ash, still warm and smoldering, as if the fire had kept burning long after I'd gone to bed. But that wasn't possible. I was certain I'd killed every ember. Still, I told myself maybe I'd missed something, maybe a spark hid under a damp log and flared back up. So I rebuilt the pit deeper this time and used rocks around the edges. When night came, I repeated my ritual, ate stretched, wrote a little in my journal, and then extinguished the fire like a ceremony. Covered it in water, stirred the mud, stomped it again. No orange, no heat, no chance of flame. But when I woke up the next morning, the same thing. The pit was glowing, the coals red hot, the rocks blackened with soot, and the air smelled like burned pine, sharp and fresh like it had just gone out minutes before. That's when I started to feel watched. The third night, I didn't build a fire. I ate jerky in the dark with my headlamp flicking against every rustle in the trees. I kept glancing at the fire ring, though, at the stones now layered with soot and ash, wondering if they'd glow again without my help. I stayed up late, listening to the silence, trying to convince myself it was fine that I was fine. Eventually, fatigue won, and I crawled into my sleeping bag. I didn't sleep deep, more like drifted in and out of shallow dreams, each one tinged with the smell of smoke. At some point, I heard a crack outside, not sharp like a branch snapping, but soft like something stepping gently. I held my breath. Then another step closer. Then stillness. I waited a long time before peeking out of the tent and saw nothing, just the dark, just the trees. I forced myself back down, pulled the bag over my head like a child, and waited for morning. At dawn, I unzipped the tent and the smell hit me first. Stronger than ever, thick and heavy, the kind of smoke that clings to your clothes. I turned and froze. The fire pit was blazing, not just smoldering, but lit with real flame, dancing steady like someone had fed it carefully and recently. Beside it in the dirt were boot prints, not mine. They were bigger, wider, deeper. Someone else had stood right there tending that fire while I lay curled a few feet away inside thin nylon, pretending I was alone. I don't remember packing. I just know I ran every motion automatic. I doused the fire again out of habit, packed my gear as the last steam curled from the stones. I kept looking over my shoulder, half expecting to see someone step from the tree line, hands black with ash. I hiked out fast, faster than I ever had my body humming with a fear I couldn't name. Halfway down the mountain, I met a ranger, an older man with a beard like steel wool, who asked if I'd seen signs of a recent bear. I said no, then hesitated and asked him if there were any cabins near that ridge, any places someone might camp quietly. He shook his head, said that stretch hadn't seen people in months, maybe years, too remote, too overgrown. When I told him what I'd seen, he just looked at me for a long time, then said, "Some places don't like to be left cold. Some fires remember their warmth and want it back." That was all he said. It's been over a year since that trip, and I haven't gone camping again. Not alone, not with friends, not anywhere near that ridge. Sometimes I still wake up with the phantom scent of pine smoke in my nose, or the sound of wet logs shifting in place like something building a fire just outside the window. Maybe it's nothing. Maybe I was tired. Maybe I made a mistake when I put that fire out. Or maybe I didn't. Maybe something else was cold out there and it wanted to share the heat, wanted someone to sit with it again for just one more night. Some places burn for company, but others they take it without asking. And when something invites you into a space that was never yours, don't be surprised if it doesn't let you leave whole. One of us dared to sleep where no one should have, and not all of them came back. Story 2. The tent that took Kyle. We were 5 friends close since high school, and we thought nothing could shake us. Every year we took a camping trip together somewhere far from cell towers and gas stations where the nights were pitch black and the world felt untouched. That year, we went deep into Bridger Teton National Forest. It was colder than we expected and eerily quiet, the kind of quiet that makes you talk too much around the fire just to keep something moving in the air. We picked a flat spot near a creek and found something strange. A weathered green canvas tent already set up under a thicket of trees. It looked abandoned, not trashed, not ruined, just old. There were no footprints around it, no gear, no trash, not even a log dragged nearby to sit on. It was like the woods had swallowed whoever pitched it. We joked about it being cursed, but Kyle, always the thrill seeker, said he'd sleep in it as a dare. We laughed, but I felt a shift, something uneasy, like the woods disagreed. That first night was calm. We drank too much burned marshmallows, told ghost stories that now feel too close to truth. Kyle disappeared into the old tent, zipping it up with a grin. I remember thinking how dark that thing looked, even with our lanterns nearby, like the shadows inside were thicker. I woke once around 3 needing to piss, and noticed the flap of the old tent moving slightly. It wasn't windy. I stared at it longer than I needed to, but nothing came out. I went back to sleep thinking I was just buzzed. The next morning, Kyle was gone. His boots were still there, neatly beside the entrance. His phone, too. No note, no gear, no sign of where he'd gone. We thought maybe he was messing with us, hiding behind trees to prank us, but after 2 hours of shouting his name and checking the nearby trails, panic settled in. That's when we saw the marks carved into the bark of 3 different trees around the tent. Deep slashes, not like initials or a date, more like symbols, jagged and uneven, the kind you'd scratch with shaking hands. We tried to act logical. Maybe a hunter made them. Maybe even Kyle did it as a joke, but no one said it with confidence. We called the park rangers using the emergency radio we kept in the truck. They said someone would be out in a few hours. We didn't wait. We kept searching, splitting up in pairs, but staying within whistle distance. Nothing. No footprints leading away, no broken branches, not even the distant sound of movement. It was like Kyle had evaporated. When the Rangers finally arrived, they searched too, but even they looked uneasy when they saw that tent. One of them touched it and pulled his hand back like it stung. He didn't say anything, but I saw him avoid eye contact with the rest of us. We stayed another night because they asked us to. They wanted someone there in case Kyle returned. No one wanted to sleep in that spot, so we moved our tents closer together, circled tight around the fire. That night, no one slept. Around 1 a.m., I thought I heard whispering. Not in the distance, but close, like someone crouched behind me, speaking through their teeth. When I turned, no one was there. I didn't say anything. I thought I was losing it. But in the morning, Jess looked pale and said she'd had a dream about Kyle standing at the edge of the creek, whispering something she couldn't understand with water running from his eyes. Then he came back, just after dawn. He walked straight into camp from the woods, barefoot, silent, covered in mud and tiny cuts. We yelled, ran to him, wrapped him in a blanket, but he didn't respond. Not really. He looked at us like we were strangers, like we were interrupting something. The ranger called for a medical evac. They said he was in shock. But that wasn't what scared me most. What scared me most came later. When we got home, we tried to make sense of it. Kyle didn't remember where he'd been. He didn't remember the trip. He didn't even remember accepting the dare to sleep in the old tent. We started going through the photos we'd taken that weekend, hoping something might trigger his memory. And that's when we saw it, or didn't see it. In every photo, every angle of the camp, the fire pit, the creek, the group shots, the candid ones, the tent wasn't there. The green canvas tent, the one Kyle slept in, the one we all saw, the one that sat there before we even arrived. Gone. Not just in one photo, in all of them. I remember staring at the background of a picture I'd taken of Kyle that first night, the one where he's giving a thumbs up in front of the trees. He's smiling, his boots on fire behind him, but behind him, where the tent should be, was nothing but trees. Empty space, undisturbed leaves, like it had never existed, like it had been invisible to the camera. Or worse, like it only existed long enough to take him. I haven't been back to Bridger Teton. None of us have. Kyle moved away a few months later. Said he needed to be near the ocean. Said the trees made him nervous. He doesn't talk about it anymore. Neither do we. But sometimes I dream of that tent. I dream I'm inside it, zipped up, and I can hear my friends laughing outside, but no matter how loud I shout, they can't hear me. And then everything goes quiet, and the zipper starts to move. We thought losing someone was the worst thing that could happen, but sometimes it's not what vanishes in the night, it's what stays behind and watches. And when the forest decides to speak clearly, you better pray it isn't your name carved into the warning. Story 3. The Skinned Warning. We weren't new to camping. Between the four of us, we'd hiked most of Oregon's backcountry and never had a single reason to be scared. That's probably why we got cocky. That fall, we set up camp deep in a part of Willamette National Forest that few people bothered to hike through anymore. It was remote, no signal, and we had to cross a shallow creek just to reach a decent clearing. It was perfect. Quiet, cool, and cut off. We arrived just before sunset, dropped our packs, and started setting up the tents while the fire took shape in the center of the camp. The forest felt heavier than usual. Not ominous, just thick. Like the trees were leaning a little too close, the air too still. I remember thinking it was strange that we hadn't seen any animals. No squirrels, no birds, not even bugs. Just silence. That night, we cooked over the fire and talked about stupid things. College breakups, jobs we hated. It felt good to be away from everything. I turned in early, a little buzzed from the whiskey we passed around. The others stayed up laughing and throwing wood into the flames. I woke sometime in the night to the sound of rustling near my tent. Slow, heavy, and deliberate. It wasn't an animal. It didn't scamper. It stepped. I held my breath and waited, listening to it stop just outside. Then it moved on. In the morning, I convinced myself it was a dream. That is, until Dan found the carcass. It was a raccoon, or at least it had been. Someone had skinned it clean, left its muscles and tendons exposed like something out of a biology class, and hung it by its front paws from a branch less than 20 feet from our tents. There was no blood on the ground, no drag marks, no footprints, just this skinned thing swinging gently in the breeze. We stood around it for a long time, none of us saying much. Eventually, Max muttered that it had to be some backwoods trapper trying to scare us off. I wanted to believe that. So did everyone else. But none of us said it out loud. We cut it down and buried it near a stump, not knowing what else to do. The rest of the day was weirdly quiet. No jokes, no music, just firewood and glances. That night we kept the fire big, bigger than usual. None of us said it, but we were nervous. It wasn't just the skinned animal, it was the way the woods felt wrong now. Like they were too quiet, too still, like everything around us was waiting. No one went to their tent early. We sat up until the last log was ash. Then finally we crawled into our bags. I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that thing hanging there again. And worse, I imagined something watching us hang it, waiting for us to bury it, and deciding we'd ignored the warning. Sometime after 2 a.m., I heard movement again. This time it wasn't footsteps. It was the sound of something being dragged through leaves, slow and steady. Then it stopped. I didn't look outside. I couldn't. I just laid there and waited. I must have passed out from sheer exhaustion. When morning came, I stepped out and saw it. Another carcass. This one was bigger, a deer. Skinned the same way, clean, no blood, no smell. Hung from the same branch we had cut the raccoon down from. Its eyes were gone, and beneath it, nailed into the trunk of the tree, was a piece of old splintered wood carved with 5 letters, crooked and deep. Leave. We didn't eat breakfast. We didn't speak. We packed everything in silence, barely even looked at each other. No one said the word afraid, but it was all over our faces. I kept looking into the trees, waiting for someone to step out, someone holding a knife or a bow or something worse. But no one came, just wind and cold and silence. We hiked out as fast as we could, didn't stop until we reached the trailhead, and even then we kept walking until we saw other people. Hikers, tourists, anyone. A few weeks later, Max went back to grab something he had left behind. He took his brother and didn't tell any of us until after. The clearing was empty. No animals, no message. But the tree, the one with the sign, had deep gouges carved into it, fresh and angry. When he showed us the photos, I felt cold all over again. He swore he didn't touch anything, but something had gone back. Something had been there again. I haven't camped since. Not in forests, not in backyards, nowhere. Sometimes I hear things at night, like dragging in leaves even when I'm home. Sometimes I see a branch swing in still air and remember that word, the one that wasn't a threat, but a promise. Leave. And now I understand. That wasn't a warning. That was the second chance we didn't deserve. Sometimes the woods don't give you answers, just silence, just memories that follow you home. If any part of tonight made you pause, made you look twice into the dark, maybe that's enough. Not everything that watches wants to be seen, and not every sound in the trees needs a name. Sleep well tonight. We'll see you again when the fire burns low and the stories start to whisper.